Something was wrong with the silence, not the kind of silence that follows a verdict, not the kind that settles over a courtroom when a sentence is finally read. This silence felt different, heavy, unfinished, because after the cameras left, after the headlines faded, after the jury walked away, one document appeared, an appeal dot, and for some people, that piece of paper meant hope. For others, it meant something far more dangerous. Because hidden behind the arguments, the legal filings, and the promises of justice, was a risk almost nobody was talking about, a risk that could change everything. And the deeper you look into Karmelo Anthony's appeal, the stranger the story becomes. The courtroom had already witnessed tears, anger, and heartbreak. Family members sat frozen as years of grief collided with years of legal arguments. By the time the sentence was announced, many believed the story had finally reached its conclusion. The tragedy that had captured national attention seemed to have found its answer. A jury had spoken, a judgment had been delivered, and for a brief moment, people believed certainty had returned. But certainty is fragile. Sometimes it lasts only hours, because almost immediately after the conviction, another process quietly began moving behind closed doors. Lawyers gathered documents, legal teams reviewed transcripts, motions were drafted. While the public focused on the punishment, something else was unfolding in the background. A new battle was being prepared, one that wouldn't ask what happened that day. Instead, it would ask whether the system itself had made mistakes. Appeals often sound simple to people outside the legal world. Many imagine a second trial, a fresh jury, a completely new examination of evidence. But that's rarely how it works. Appeals are colder than that, more technical, less emotional. They focus on procedure, rules, and legal decisions made during the original trial. That reality creates an unsettling tension, because an appeal doesn't necessarily revolve around guilt or innocence. It revolves around whether the law was followed correctly. Every objection, every jury decision, every ruling by the judge, every step becomes vulnerable to scrutiny. And when a case is as public, emotional, and controversial as this one, every tiny detail suddenly matters far more than most people realize. The original case had already become something larger than a courtroom proceeding. Online debates exploded. Commentators picked sides. Social media transformed fragments of testimony into endless arguments. Facts mixed with speculation. Emotion mixed with outrage. Everyone seemed convinced they knew the truth. Yet inside the appellate process, public opinion carries almost no weight. Appeals courts don't care about trending hashtags. They don't care about viral clips. They don't care about emotional reactions. They care about records, transcripts, and legal standards. That creates a strange disconnect. Outside the courthouse, millions of people argue about what happened. Inside the appellate system, the conversation becomes entirely different. And sometimes that difference changes everything. As legal experts began examining possible grounds for appeal, attention turned toward issues most people never noticed during the trial itself. Jury selection became one area of discussion. Procedural rulings became another. Questions emerged about whether certain decisions could be challenged under appellate review. None of these issues guaranteed success, but they created possibilities, and possibilities are all an appeal needs to survive. For families already carrying unimaginable grief, those possibilities can feel agonizing, because a conviction often creates a sense of finality. An appeal reopens uncertainty. Suddenly, the future becomes blurry again. The emotional wound that seemed ready to scar over is forced open once more, and nobody knows how long that uncertainty will last. Then another detail began attracting attention. Reports surfaced regarding questions surrounding legal representation during the appeal process. Discussions about finances entered the public conversation. Some observers found the situation confusing. Others found it controversial. The legal filings added yet another layer to an already complex story. But beneath those debates was a deeper issue. Appeals are not quick. They can stretch for months, sometimes years. During that time, narratives evolve. Witnessed memories age. Public attention drifts elsewhere. What feels certain today may feel distant tomorrow. Time itself becomes a factor. And time has a strange way of reshaping how people remember events. Meanwhile, supporters and critics continued fighting their own battle outside the courts. Every development triggered new arguments. Every statement generated fresh controversy. The case had become larger than the individuals directly involved. It transformed into a symbol for competing beliefs about justice, fairness, and accountability. That expansion created a dangerous environment. Because when a case becomes symbolic, facts sometimes lose their place at the center of the story. People begin defending positions instead of examining evidence. They start protecting narratives instead of searching for truth. And once that happens, reality becomes harder to see. The appellate attorneys faced a difficult challenge. Their job wasn't to relive the tragedy. Their job was to identify legal vulnerabilities, to find moments where procedure may have failed, to locate issues that could persuade a higher court to intervene. That is how appeals work. Not through emotion, through precision, through technical arguments hidden inside thousands of pages of records. And that's what made the situation unsettling. Because even strong convictions can be overturned if significant legal errors are discovered, not because facts change, not because memories change, but because courts must follow rules. The integrity of the system depends on those rules, even when the outcome is controversial. Then came the twist many people never saw coming. The greatest danger in the appeal was not necessarily the possibility of success, it was the possibility of failure. Because if the appeal collapses completely, every argument is exhausted, every challenge is rejected, every remaining legal pathway becomes narrower. The appellate process is often portrayed as a lifeline, but it can also become a final confirmation, a moment when higher courts review everything and decide the original result stands, not weakened, strengthened. For some observers, that possibility changed the entire conversation. The appeal was no longer simply an opportunity. It was also a gamble, a high-stakes examination that could ultimately cement the conviction more firmly than before. As months of scrutiny unfolded, attention slowly shifted away from dramatic courtroom moments and towards something less visible: legal records, appellate standards, judicial reasoning, the machinery of the justice system operating far from television, cameras. And hidden inside that machinery was the reality few people wanted to acknowledge. Appeals are extraordinarily difficult to win. Most do not result in overturned convictions. Most end with affirmation of the original judgment, not because courts refuse to reconsider cases, but because the threshold for proving reversible error is incredibly high. Every appellate lawyer knows this. Every judge knows this. Yet public conversations often forget it, and that's where the full truth finally emerges. The dangerous risk nobody talks about is not a secret piece of evidence, not a hidden witness, not a shocking revelation waiting in the shadows. It's expectation. Because appeals create hope. Hope for reversal, hope for vindication, hope for a dramatically different ending. But the legal system was never designed to guarantee those hopes. An appeal is not a promise. It is a challenge. And the challenge facing Karmelo Anthony's legal team is immense. They must convince higher courts that meaningful legal errors occurred during a trial that resulted in a murder conviction and a 35-year sentence. The burden is theirs. The clock is already running, and the outcome remains uncertain. By the time the final ruling arrives, years may have passed. Headlines will have faded. Public arguments will have moved on. But two families will still be living with the consequences. Because appeals can challenge a verdict, they cannot rewind a tragedy. And sometimes the most frightening part of a case isn't what happened in the courtroom, it's realizing the story may never truly feel finished.